when God said it's neither Eastern nor Western, is because, like, we have, like, in terms of our light, our knowledge, we have two big schools, right? Eastern philosophy, Western philosophy. And I think God, he just trying to say that, like, his light is not like, it doesn't resemble the Western or the Eastern kind of, or it's not extracted from them. It's something else entirely. That's usually how I think of it, of course. Yeah.
Couldn't you also say that because he doesn't limit it to the east or to the west, that God is trying to tell us, like, look, these are the parameters, the east and the west, just like God gives us a framework to work with, that he tells us don't transgress past the limits of your religion. And everything else in between, all these possible interpretations of how you should do certain things, I leave it up to you. Don't go outside of it. Don't create. Don't permit. Don't anything. Don't add. But stay within this. After that, each one of you is going to have different scenarios on how to handle certain things differently than the other person. What may apply to you will not apply to somebody else. The conditions that apply to you, etc., etc. It's almost like God is repeatedly trying to tell us, find the middle way or find the way towards God. And one of the best ways that we're repeatedly told is, read the Quran, do righteous acts, just follow the way of righteousness that God puts down through the Quran. And then from there, through these acts of consistency and asking him, he will show you. He will send someone, he will inspire you with an act, he will send a message some way, somehow, or he'll send you the right verse at the right time that applies to your situation.
Yeah. Brother Peter mentioned this before multiple times, that, like, the way God sets the precedent in the Quran for law is like minimum and maximum sort of criteria, like extremes. So, and the light, I think this is, the light is often equated with the guidance, right? So it could be, the law. So that makes sense too. Like, God's light is in between the extremes.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the ones the one that Brother Douglas pointed out earlier, I guess I won't repeat, but I had made a comment on that some months back when I first came across this verse, the 24:39. I'll just share it on the VC1 chat because I thought it was really interesting, because being that I work heavily with how the brain works, and I'm trying to help people, let go of patterns and symptoms and behavioral reactions. And generally, we're heavily influenced. Like, dopamine is the one universal currency that if it feels good, I don't care what it is, I'll take it, right? And many people are controlled through the usage of dopamine, and dopamine tends to mislead us easily. So I had made that post of, like, associating this mirage, these works that give us nothing but emptiness, as chasing these dopamine highs that only aim to misguide us. And then when we're at the bottom of the pit, whether we're addicts, whether we're addicts in any situation, not just substance, but like sex, video games, laziness, anything that's essentially harmful to us, we realize I'm at the lowest of the lowest. And you find God is like, look, this is not where you will find the truth. And then he gives you he requits you. It's like, look, walk back to me. And a lot of people will start walking back towards him because they realize that this is an empty path of nothingness. And so I really, really like that verse of how God reminds us, you can easily be led astray by things that you think feel good, trying to quench your thirst, to quench your, every time we want dopamine highs, we want more and more and more. And then the previous hit wasn't enough, so we need more, and then we need more. It's not 6 hours of gaming, now I need 8 hours of gaming. It's not one victory, now I need 10 victories, in whatever context. And so it's like, all of these are empty. They're all vanity. They're all superficial highs. They're all meant there to either pull on our ego, pull on our desires, pull on our pleasures, things that are, again, not based on God. God is God, and God's light is the one that we should be seeking.
Peace. I'd like to tag on what Brother Mikhail just said. Verse 39 suggests that whatever occupies my mind, in other words, if I'm thirsty, that's occupying my mind. That's what I want. That's what I'm thinking about at the time. So my thoughts and what is occupying my mind actually impacts what I perceive or what I think is out there. It may not be. Again, going back to the concept of apperception, where a person gives reality a meaning to what they're thinking about in the first place, what they need, that dopamine craving, whatever it is they want, whatever it is they're looking for, they're apt to think it's out there or think it's in reach. And that just simply reminds me of the fact that we are enjoying to be God conscious, to be thankful, be God conscious, such that God gives us the light to see and the discernment to see. Peace. Thank you.
Yeah, isn't one of the comments from Bismillah? Isn't one of the comments of Rashad is that whatever is in your mind the most, that is your God? So if you're constantly thinking about trying to win a debate and you make that your whole life, or trying to prove to someone why you're right, you know, or why you need to, etc. It's like if you're constantly placing anything else in your brain as the majority of a thought other than God, then you're worshiping that over God. And a lot of the times, we say, oh, especially in the cases of, I think, brother, who was it yesterday? I don't know if it was AAA or someone said that as we get closer and closer towards the end of times and submission continues to grow, and it's going to be like this battle, it's going to be less about polytheism maybe, and it's more going to be about ego. It's going to be about what are you going to submit to God's ultimate and entirety, his revelations, or are you going to submit to your ego and what you think and what you want to be true and things like that. I forgot entirely the context, but the whole point being is that many people think that when you're fighting in the cause of God and you justify, well, I'm going to spend the next, 10, 15 hours debating people and oh, hello? Sorry. No, I was saying that if you're going to spend the next 10 to 15 hours constantly debating, when you start forgetting your prayers, you start forgetting the things that you do, you start being unrighteous, you start doing all these unrighteous behaviors, and then, committing sins and everything, like you start justifying all of these unrighteous acts because I got to defend God. At this point, you no longer make it about God, you're making it about your ego and trying to prove to others why you're right. And this is a very subtle difference where people can often mislead themselves that they think they're doing something righteous, but they're actually just growing and growing and growing their ego. And if they win debates, if they win arguments, then it's only going to further lead you into destruction. When you're doing things for ego and vanity, this is when you know, or when we know, we're going down Satan's path. So it's like this constant the pushing and pulling, this constant need to like calibrate ourselves so that we don't ever deviate too far into trying to prove to people why you were right, but rather just be the example of what's right and then letting God do his part with everybody else. It's a very interesting system that God puts.
Peace, Michael. I want to ask you, do you think it's a matter strictly of intentions, or I mean, I just like to ask you, is this a matter of intentions? Like, is it if you shift your intention, suddenly your action can become more righteous? Or because I would want to win debates, and I think maybe obsessed with that, but and not very trained. But if I shift this to, I want to, you know, I want to open someone to maybe reconsider and I actually, put the effort, the same effort I would do to win a debate, but rather than to open someone's mind, is that then becoming righteous if I shift this intention just like this?
I would say that that's a base, but many times we can set the intention and still justify unrighteous behavior. Like if God's repeatedly telling us, kill your ego, kill your ego, kill your ego. Debates are specifically about proving who's right and who's wrong. A discussion is about exchanging information. It doesn't matter who's right or who's wrong. It's like, look, I'll share with you information. I'll hear your information. We let God do the rest. May God guide whom he wills. May God guide us all. That kind of thing. So debates in that concept will always be under the nature of promoting ego, especially when there's other people watching and each of them has an objective to bring people from the other side to their side. All of this is ego. So the nature of debates as a whole is very satanic, if you ask me, even though the intention could be pure. So you have to be very careful. I mean, I'm recognizing this in myself because obviously you guys, all of us here have debated many times with many different people. And I'm constantly trying to what's that word? Not triangulate, equivalent. Look, this is what I get for not paying attention. I don't remember the word that I just used recently. Calibrate. I'm constantly trying to calibrate how much of my ego is involved versus my good intention. And what I'm starting to discern the difference is that the moment I start getting mad or bothered or annoyed that they do not take what I say, that's my ego. Simply put, the moment they reject what I say and I take offense to that, or I get defensive, or I get louder, or I get any of these emotions, that's my ego involved. And the more I push back on that, now my ego is definitely fighting more than the intention. So I have to constantly recognize that, look, I'm only here to share you information. If you reject it, that's completely on you. I care about you. I wish the best for you, God willing. You know, that's it. It's this constant recognizing of at what point. It's like if my wife criticizes me and says, "Hey, you don't pay attention to what I say," and it's like, and she has this is a built experience. It's like either I could take it defensive and be like, "Where's this coming from? Yeah, you're wrong, and that's not true. I do it because of this and this and," or I can listen to someone's feedback. Oh, I understand what you're saying. And then that's it. And I take it for what it is. It all depends on how we take the information, how we take the reactions. Because our reaction is generally based on trying to protect ourselves or trying to protect what we love or what we care about. So it always has to be like, am I protecting, like if someone's hurting a little child and I get in the way, is that my ego? No, I'm protecting something that's being done unrighteous. But if I'm protecting myself to look better in the eyes of somebody else, that becomes ego and vanity. I don't care what you think. It's like one of the quotes from Game of Thrones: "A lion doesn't care what the sheep thinks." Not that I necessarily agree with that. You should care what your peers think, always. But there is there's a balance between ego and confidence, and crossing that boundary, now you're starting to serve your ego because you need to prove yourself to everyone else as opposed to just being. Which is what God repeatedly says: stick down the righteous path. If they treat you horrible, you treat goodness, or you treat evil with goodness. If you treat evil with goodness, that means that in all scenarios, no matter how bad it gets, you treat evil with goodness because it's difficult. Because it requires self-control. It requires suppressing your anger. It requires suppressing your ego. It requires all of these things. He paints down this path of like, kill your ego, kill your ego, kill your ego. So it's very, intention is one role, but it's not the only layer. It's not the only factor. My opinion, of course. And as Brother Douglas says, God knows best. May God guide us all.
Bring up something slightly different, but regarding verse 35, where it talks about the allegory of his light and the description of a concave mirror behind a lamp that is placed inside a glass container. And then it talks about the glass container. If you map this out, it's like, at least when I do it, I come up with two kind of, concepts. One is this aspect of like a niche, a wall. Then you got a little like a light that's amplifying that light. But the other one is, if you look at, I got this image of a flashlight. Or if you think of a spotlight, you got this tiny little light source. But what happens is it gets amplified and directed. I kind of see it in the same way, where it's like you have the tiniest bit of God's light, and God causes that to be amplified. What's interesting is in these verses, you have, about 5 verses or so that in the chapter entitled Light, that are these different light allegories.
And what do you think that means?
Well, I got my theories. I'll hold off.
Whoa, no. What do you mean? What are these different lights?
We got to go through each one. We got to go through what each one constitutes. It's like this first one I see in this aspect of like an amplification. And then if you look at then it talks about, say, for instance, like the believers who frequent the Masjid. So if you look at elsewhere in the Quran, it says, the light radiates from them into the right, and that their faces are going to be lightened up. And then in contrast, the next one, it talks about a mirage. What does that signify? Like, you think about all these people in life when, say, for instance, you read Surah 62, what is the contrast from those who go to the masjid from those who don't? What do you guys think?
Hmm. Well, so like in the concept of mirage, like that you're using right now, it's a form of light, but it's not. Is that where you're going with this? Like each one of these, I'm trying to visualize your argument because I'm also looking at the images and I'm not entirely seeing what it is that you're seeing yet. Forgive me.
Yeah. So it says. So let's just map it out. So it says it's a allegory of his light is that of a concave mirror. So if you think of a concave mirror, look at the image of the flashlight, right? And then you have a tiny bulb, and the glass container is like a bright pearl-like star. The fuel thereof is supplied by a blessed oil-producing tree. It's neither eastern nor western. So this is almost like you take a parabola, right? That's a mirror, concave mirror. Inside you place a bulb. What happens? Like if you had the bulb on its own, it wouldn't have that amplification factor, right? God takes whatever it is that we give. Say, for instance, you give $1. He says he multiplies it. It's like 7 grains of corn. Um, with each not grain, what is it? Kernels of corn with 100 grain, right? Sevenfold. So that's 700 times manifold. Right. So whatever it is that you contribute towards God's light, God is going to amplify that manifold. Let me pull the actual verse. Oh, butchered it.
That one right there, right?
2261.
2435. Oh
No,
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 you're talking about a different one. The
2261.
nut. Okay.
I'll put it in, right? So it says, I mean, this is just God's system. The example, those who spend their monies in the cause of God, is that of a grain that produces 7 spikes with 100 grains in each spike, right? So that's a 700 times increase in whatever it is that you contribute. God multiplies this manifold for whomever he wills. God is bounteous knower, right? So meaning that if you're reflecting some of God's light, that God is going to amplify whatever it is that you contribute. Right? And then it talks about the connection between that. And then it says, God's guidance is found in houses exalted by God, for his name is commemorated therein, glorifying him therein day and night. People are not distracted by business or trade, right? From commemorating God and observe the contact prayer Salat and give the obligatory charity Zakat. And they are conscious of the day when their minds and eyes will be horrified. My takeaway from this, and it says, God will certainly reward them for their good works and will shower them with his grace. God provides for whomever he wills without limits. And that if you give God a loan of righteousness, you do a good deed, you commemorate him, you are appreciative, God is going to amplify whatever it is that you contribute to that equation. Right? In the contrast of that, of chasing a mirage, like if you look in Surah 62, let me put it in 9 through 11, right? It says, "O you who believe, when the congregational prayer, Salat al-Jum'ah, is announced on Friday, you shall hasten to the commemoration of God and drop all business. It's better for you if you only knew. Once the prayer is completed, you may spread through the land and seek God's bounties and continue to remember God frequently, that you may succeed." And then it talks about the contrast. It says, "When some of them come across a business deal or some entertainment, they rush to it, leave you standing. Say what God possesses is far better than the entertainment or the business. God is the best provider. Right? So why is it that someone goes after these things, the business transaction, the entertainment? What do they think they're going to get from that?
Rewards.
Yeah, they think that it's going to give them joy, happiness, and what they find. Where is it? It says, I think it says basically what they find there is yeah, it says God there instead to requite him fully for his works. They're chasing after this mirage. They think, oh, if I get this car, I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be, finally complete. I get this right coffee table, finally my living room set's going to look immaculate. I'm going to be, so joyous and happy. And so they chase after these illusions. And, when they get there, what do they find? Punishment because they forgot God.
Mhm.
Peace. I'd like to make a comment about verse 35 that possibly is a question as well. Um, in verse 35, God says, light upon light. God guides to his light whomever he wills, and points out that this is it comes from an oil and it needs no fire to ignite it. So that's not, as we know, as I think we know, this is not in any way referring actually to physical light. God's light is not in this context physical, it's spiritual. And just like the word in English, insight, the word insight in English implies sight within or inside, the ability to see. And we know that the physical eye needs physical light for it to, for us to receive the signals of anything that the physical eye, like a camera, is capturing. Whereas insight occurs in the, so to speak, mind or self. And insight and imagination, you don't need physical light in order to have insight. You don't need uh spiritual light is not limited by the physical. I just wanted to make that comment that God, when it says God thus cites the parables for the people, that parable, God gives us that in a manner that we can comprehend. But the light upon light is obviously a spiritual light. This is not a physical form of light. What it allows is that through God's guidance or his light, it enables us to discern truth from falsehood. Peace. Thank you.
Peace. What I understand from this allegory, I agree with Brother Douglas. Also, looks like we have yeah, imagination is very interesting, and I really enjoy hearing all of us. My understanding was this: if I hold my face close to this mirror, concave mirror, my reflection would be bigger and upright. It's like a virtual upright image. My real soul, like if I understand this light and get close to this light, because of the concave mirror allegory, my soul will be bigger. But if I stand a bit farther away, my soul, my image, flips upside down because concave mirrors, if I'm not mistaken, if you get close to it, gets bigger. If you go back, you get like upside down, also looks smaller and then larger, depending on the distance. Like that's the kind of like a hell situation. If I go further from this light, I will be upside down and I will first be small and then going larger back for. So this was my kind of understanding. Peace.
To expand on
Peace.
that, actually, brother. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, brother.
Peace. Thank you, Brother Michael. I just like to comment on what Brother Salami just said, where he used the word inversion. You know, the concept of inversion is something turning totally upside down, opposite of what it should be. And that's exactly what happens to the soul that distance itself from the guidance and the light of God. That soul is inverted, that soul is dwarfed, right? It is opposite the fitra, the true fitra, or its true nature that God gave it in submission. Thank you. Peace.
Yeah, it's to echo on that. We know that when God comes, right, the the more righteous those. If someone can help me find the verse regarding Jesus and and the angels, the ones that more righteous you are, they'll be closer to God, right? And how do we discern righteousness from unrighteousness? Is upholding the commandments of the Quran, upholding the behavior that God suggests us to do, and the more consistent we are in His guidance, the more righteous we are. And as God says, the righteous do not die; you won't experience death, a second death. So it's like the closer and closer you maintain, or the more and more you maintain righteousness, the more certainty you will have. The more certainty you will have, the more righteous you'll be. The more righteous you'll be, the closer you'll be to God. Like it's consistent. The closer you are to His light, the more trust you have in Him, the less doubt you have. The more you are fully like if a plane were to drop in front of you, or if your plane were going, or God forbid it, but of course it's that level of certainty of like it's gonna be okay. Alhamdulillah. Whatever, no matter how bad it gets, Alhamdulillah. And it's a very, very beautiful level of trust that God willing we can all have that one day.
Peace to everybody. What verse are we talking about here? Sorry, I just got it now.
Yeah, God bless you. We read from Surah 24, verses 35 through 46. We're just talking about some of the allegories in that. I wanted to read actually two quotes from the Bible. So one is from Psalm 119. It's actually, if I'm not mistaken, it's the longest psalm in the um, entire book. It says, and this is just verses 103 through 109. It says, "How sweet are thy words to my taste, sweeter than honey to my mouth. Through the precepts I get understanding, thereof I hate every false way. Thy word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. I have sworn an oath and confirmed it. Observe thy righteous ordinances. I am sorely afflicted. Give me life, O Lord, according to thy word. Accept my offerings of praise, O Lord. Teach me the ordinances. I hold my life in my hand continually, but I do not forget the law." It's this concept where, without God, we're in darkness, and God is the one who illuminates the right ways, so they become distinct from the wrong ways. The way that we really are able to identify anything is through contrast. Right? So if you're in total darkness, there's zero contrast. You can't tell, an apple from a bowling ball, right? In darkness, they look the same. But once you have light, then you start being able to identify, contrast. And as you amplify light, the contrast becomes that much more apparent. And I think, a lot of times what happens is people, they get into these ruts where they're so far down in darkness that they become incapable of discerning truth from falsehood. They've kind of lost that ability. And I got a question for you guys. If you read the next allegory in 40, it says, Exile from God, total darkness." It says, "Another allegory is that of being in total darkness in the midst of violent ocean, and waves upon waves in addition to thick fog, darkness upon darkness." So this sounds like it's pretty darn dark, right? You have, waves upon waves in a violent ocean, total darkness. Yet it says, if he looked at his own hand, he could barely see it. Whomever God deprives of light will have no light. Why is it indicating that they could barely see it? Why didn't it say that they can't see it?
Peace. That's a very good question. My quick comment is because of His grace. I don't think there is nowhere, like in any physical place, that His grace does not touch. That's my comment.
Peace be
Peace.
upon you. What I found is there's no lie that the human can truly believe in if there isn't a foundation of truth to it, right? Like if I say the green the grass is pink, you know, that's like a just like something that we can dismiss right away. But if I conjure up a bunch of truth and be like, you know, the spectrum of light that comes from the sun, it bounces off and most of the color is absorbed. So therefore, what you see is a reflection of green. Therefore, pink, the grass is more pink than green, right? Now I can truly believe the lie, right? Because there's a foundation of truth to it. And I think that's the case, right? Like you can't have a lie based off of a lie. You have to have like the best lies are steeped in truth. So there has to be a fundamental foundation that's there. That would be my understanding. God knows best.
Yeah, I
Peace.
think. Sorry, yeah, carry on, brother.
Go. I was peace. Thank you. I was going to tag on to what Brother Justin said. You know, uh, it says he can barely see it. Uh, in the dark, totally, totally frozen in the dark, but can barely see his own hand. What comes to my mind is his own hand is part of the self, allegorically, the physical self. And so in that sense, the person can barely see or isn't even aware of his own self. The hand is as much a reflection of a person being aware of themselves as it is the idea of being a receptacle for the truth and light. That's what one thing comes to my mind, that such darkness, such distance from God's guidance is such that the person barely even is capable of knowing what they are, what their purpose is, and what their nature is. Thank you. Peace.
To
Peace.
further on that, the hands are often symbolic of one's actions, right? We see this continuously. A person's works is done with their hands. So we could delve into what Brother Douglas says even further and saying they aren't even aware of their own works, right? They aren't even like their idea or perception of what they do is flawed to such a degree that they can't even recognize what they do.
Yeah, peace. Yeah, I think down the same lines. I think when it comes to the darkness upon darkness, in my eyes, it seems like a person is so far away from God, is so unaware of God and away from the divine light or guidance. In this case, is light upon light, the Quran. That I mean, he could barely see his own hand. It would, in my eyes, seems like that he could identify the truth, meaning that it's in his DNA. It's like inbuilt in every single person. In his core, he could barely see. I mean, his DNA, his fitra, is speaking out that God is one. But due to all the darknesses and him being away from God for such a long time, or in that darkness, he could barely see it. So I think, I mean, even with people who are far away from God, from the light of God, with deep within themselves, within their souls, there is that voice that they know the truth. You know, they know that God is, but because of the layers of darknesses around them, they're still not accepting it, or they don't have the ability to accept it. But that voice is still there within their deep, within their DNA, within their soul, that 100% that God is one. So that's what I think it means here. That even though he can't see anything, he could barely recognize, see his hand, probably meaning that, you know, it's just that core thing inside him in his DNA, he could barely see the light of his hand, basically, that God is one. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I have
Sorry,
a.
I probably didn't explain it properly, but it's basically DNA. It's all within us.
Mhm.
Then
I
God's
have
already.
my take on it is the fact that one of the excuses you hear from individuals is that basically, look, I've committed so much sin, so much transgression, there's no hope for me, I'm a lost cause, I'm going to hell, and this just negative sentiment. And the reality is, despite the fact of someone being in total darkness, completely lost at sea, waves upon waves of fog, and just seems like there's no hope for them. That even under such dire circumstances, there's still a trace of light that they can follow. There's obviously a number of verses in the Quran, but one of the ones that comes to mind is that, let me see if I can find it. It says, oh man, how's the verse go? Let's hit my tongue. It says, never despair.
It's 39:53.
Oh, 39:53. Correct. Yeah. 39:53. So this is the one. It says, proclaim, O my servants who exceeded the limits, never despair of God's mercy, for God forgives all sins. He is the forgiver most merciful. Right? Meaning that at any point, if someone decides to turn their life around, God says he transforms all those years of sin into credit. That's the mercy. That's the offer that God is giving to people. So it doesn't matter how far astray someone is, as long as they're here on earth, there's the possibility that they can, make the right decision. And they all know inherently what the right decision is. It's just, do they have the wherewithal to follow through with it? Just one other verse, 13:11. It says, shifts of angels take turns staying with each one of you. They are in front of you and behind you. They stay with you and guard you in accordance with God's commands. Thus, God does not change the condition of any people unless they themselves make the decision to change. If God wills any hardship for any people, no force can stop it, for they have none beside him as Lord and Master.
Peace. I was
Yeah.
listening to one of Peter's podcasts the other day, and there was something that he had said that of a quote from like a submitters conference from Rashad, and it just, I had to have it, and I messaged Peter and asked him if he could send me this thing, and towards the end of this, I guess it was a brochure for the submitters conference, it said that the angels treat everyone like a potential believer until death, and that we should do the same. So I just thought that was interesting, and that it does go along with that verse, that as long as one is alive, there's still some chance. And then I was reading, I was doing my recitation this morning, and was reading about Lot, and when he had offered his daughters to these men that were trying, more or less, that were wanting to take these angels, and it said, so to me, reading about it, that he offered his daughters and that they declined, it showed that that they wasn't willing and didn't care at all of doing good, of turning from their wickedness. Like, they were set in their way, and I think that was to show, that these that their time had ran out, they're not willing, maybe with the allegory, maybe, there was no light left for them to even see the profile of their hand, and yeah, like there was no chance left. There was nothing in them that had any sort of possibility for change, so that's why God brought this town annihilation.
Okay, I put the brochure. If someone wants to read it, just a few paragraphs. Hi, Chem, you around? I know you mentioned you want to read verses, but this is the.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Oh, by the way, it was a hot mic. I apologize. I didn't mean to speak right now, but when we next recite, inshallah, if there is a spot, I
No,
will.
you don't have a hot mic. No, I was saying if you wanted to read the brochure, because I don't know if we're going to be reading more verses.
Oh.
But
Yeah, why not?
I put the image. Yeah, I put the image in VC1-chat.
Okay, perfect. So the brochure, it starts with in the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. United Submitters International, 4th Annual Conference of September 1st, 2nd, 3rd of the year 1989. Welcome to your conference and congratulations for being guided through God's grace to the only religion acceptable to God, submission. References to Quran 3:19 and 385. Divine blessings have been pouring forth at a breathtaking pace, and we need this conference to catch up, update our information, and unify our actions along God's blessed path. By divine decree, we are one eternal family. Reference 4910. During conference, we hope to set the example for ourselves, for our brothers and sisters, and for our children to last until the following conference by God's grace and will. We must unify our contact prayers according to God's teachings in the Quran. We must unify our Zakat practice, the fasting of Ramadan, the Hajj pilgrimage, and we must maintain the highest moral character throughout our lives. We have been immensely blessed by God, and we must exert an extra special effort to show our appreciation for God's gift and to make ourselves worthy of God's infinite grace. As a society of submitters, we must set the standards for moral and righteous behavior. We must be honest, trustworthy, truthful, chaste, loving, and peaceful. God and his angels treat every human being as a potential believer until the time of death. Let us do the same. Let us love every human being as a potential believer who may become better than you and me in due time. This is by no means the blind love. Our guide here is the Quran. Reference 68 to 9. May God reward you generously for your time, effort, and financial sacrifices. Your brother in submission to God. And signed by Rashad.
Praise God. Do you have any thoughts, Chem, you want to share?
Very interesting. I like the mentality. I really like the mentality of like, oh, to treat someone as like a potential submitter, and the kind of like where was I reading? What was the exact line? To appreciate to God. Exactly. As a society of submitters, we must set the standard for moral and righteous behavior. We must be honest, trustworthy, truthful, chaste, loving, and peaceful. Praise God. I feel like uh in my mind, this is what I see like the best version of us. This is what we kind of have to strive for. This is what we should kind of, I guess, not only in this community online, but in our lives as well. Just try to do it as best. And I kind of like reflecting on myself, I do believe I hold some of these, but I don't believe I hold it in a sufficiently high degree. I think I should do better, and I think all of us as society, as a community, should do this better. And like doing it is like number one is being appreciative, because like being a submitter, actually being a submitter in and of itself is a grace from God. It is a god-given gift, and we must show appreciation by actually practicing the religion and being the best possible versions of ourselves. And that's like the key of perfect wealth, perfect happiness, and perfect everything. Uh, yes, I think this is what I'm thinking. It's just like a simple thing. It's not complex. It's one of those very simple things, but it's difficult to kind of to implement, because you have to be this. And I feel like Mikhail really likes to go on this, and God bless him. He's both good at applying it and preaching it as well, because we have to discipline ourselves. We have to be the best version of ourselves. And oftentimes, when I'm having like debates or conversations with people, he would serve like a reminder, like, oh, no, 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 just see, you need to calm down. You have to be righteous. You have to be straightforward. We can't do it this way. And I feel like, inshallah, we should continue on that path. And this is it for me when it comes to comments. How about you guys?
I have a question actually. So, um, so when God has exposed someone like as a hypocrite, an enemy of God, um, okay, so like we should treat everyone like a potential believer, like the angels do. Like, so does that mean, that, like, what I guess what I'm asking is, what does that mean for those sorts of situations and people? Yeah, I hope I'm making sense.
Wait, what? I didn't quite get the question. What's the
I'm trying
question?
not to name names and get into detail, but like when somebody has been exposed as a hypocrite and an enemy of God, like they've turned on submission, either you know what I'm talking about. Um, so do we still treat these people like potential believers? Like when they are fighting the believers, they're
Peace be upon you.
peace.
My understanding is that it's the action matters what they do. If someone's fighting, then you fight back. If someone's actively plotting, scheming, cannot befriend them because then you will be. And there's an example in the Quran that someone how do you befriend them when they hate you, they fight you, and whatever. So if there are, as long as they're doing their actions, you sort of retaliate or respond equally, and you do not befriend them or you do not treat them as potential believer. I mean, you can think about them someday maybe they will change, but until they actually stop doing what they're doing, you can't really take action on that. So, but if someone is a hypocrite but they're not fighting you, you can give them advice and you can treat them like um, amicable. You can treat them nicely as long as they're not actively fighting you. They're not actively plotting. They're not actively fighting the message. So it's about what they do, because we have the hypocrites during the war, and God is treating how you should be treating them, and then there's hypocrites that they are not during the war. They're in the peace treaty time, so you're amicable, you're righteous, you treat them righteously, and you treat them amicably, and you may befriend them, I believe, based on the verses. But yeah, it's just not the same. So you have to understand the situation where this applies. Treating everybody like a potential believer, to me, it's everyone that is not fighting, obviously. Anyone that is not plotting or scheming or actively, trying to fight the message or fight the submission and whatnot, or making fun or ridiculing, right? Submission. If anyone does that, then you have to stand your ground. You have to fight back, and you have to clear that I will not stand for this. You will not stand for that action. But they can
How?
still change their mind and believe at some point. There's no, and that still can be in the back of your mind. But until they stop, you have to treat them like I say. I mean, we had the example of in the battles. There were people in the enemy ground that they were believers, And God held the aggression against them because they knew, although they were swept up with the disbelievers and they were attacking and whatnot, but God somehow saved them. So there could be among the people that are hypocrites or fighting believers, true believers. So you have to treat them in a way that you are standing your ground. You're not letting them basically abuse the situation or fight the message, and you're addressing them, but you still give them reminders. You still give them a possibility for change of action. There's always should be a door open for someone to change of action in somewhere in future. That's my take.
But would you classify someone who disagrees with you the same as someone who's attacking you? You get
Salam
me?
alaikum. Salam
Walaikum
alaikum.
salam.
So, Quran is clear that there is no force in religion. The battle of that was just described, that was war, and that was in defense of. They were killing the submitters at that time, and blocking their way. So that was an active, active war. But we should not force a religion. In best possible way, we need to set example, give the message, never force it. And we can. God says you can get up and leave, change the conversation, and also messenger explains that there should be freedom of choice, freedom of religion, and this is closest to Quran in appendix. So that in war is a different situation, and that was they were defending themselves. But in regular conversation, people disagree with us. We don't fight. They have freedom to choose, and we are here to freely choose.
But when submitters have, all of these servers, all of these masjids are all takfiring each other because each of them has a belief that they have the correct interpretation, and because you don't agree with me, now I takfir you, and then constant divide, endless divides. At what point do we recognize that just because I don't accept your interpretation of dietary law, so I don't accept your interpretation of whatever, does it mean that this is not a war, this is just a disagreement, and should the communities be able to continue striving together even though they're like, look, I don't see what you see, it's fine, continue moving forward? One thing is war, actively fighting against God, actively fighting against the community, actively trying to ruin reputations and names and everything, as opposed to like before it even gets there, it's like, look, we just disagree. But just because I disagree doesn't mean that I'm going against God or whatever it is. I'm trying to find out how to, because my perspective is all of these submitter communities that have branched off and made their own groups and everything. To me, this is all Satan's plan to divide everybody because of
Well,
disagreements.
this has been, alhamdulillah, growing. Submission have been growing for past 30 years almost, and there has been always disagreement, and we will always continue because we don't have a messenger. We might have different. Thank God we have explanation of messenger. We have living messenger, which is Quran, but we are going to always have some disagreement. Now, where problem arise is that I say my way or highway, or whereas I say this is what I understand, and may God guides us. So there are community. If we start forcing our understanding, it creates division. Whereas stating what we understand and saying that this is at this time, and our understanding also has been growing. And may God guide us and give each other time, room, and space, and ourselves to study and ask God for guidance. So that prevents, but labeling each other. But we also have, choice. We can choose with whose style, I prefer to study with. I prevent myself from labeling.
Yeah, I think from my experience as well is that difference of understanding, division over difference of understanding is a satanic action. Because how would you force yourself to be united, or force yourself to be with those who dedicate their religion or their worship practices to God alone? How do you do that without thinking that there would be differences? If everybody agreed on every uniting, because we are all on the same page, and someone brought that, and I didn't have an answer for it. If everybody agreed on everything, and then someone is as an arbiter to say what's okay to disagree on and what's not okay to disagree. But I think fundamentally is that our understanding is that if your worship practice is dedicated to God alone, and then you can congregate in a masjid that is such masjid that is that, and in that masjid there will be people that understand the same way, may have differences, and although you do not want to be silent about what you understand, you can discuss it amicably. The idea is to provide a platform where information is flowing freely, without oppression, without people ostracizing other people, people pressing other people to change their views, because that view change will not come from heart, it will come from fear. And if you accept anything in religion based on fear from other people and peer pressure, that has no value. If I change my understanding because I think, what, if I don't change it, then I'll be in trouble, and then I change it. But the reason for change is not because, I understood it this way, because, God guided me this way, because I am fearful of the repercussion of it. And that has no value. So it has to be a safe environment for people to share their even wrong understanding. And it has to be an environment where people can learn from it and examine their understanding and discuss it amicably. And God willing, people will come to the correct one. I mean, and then people can change their understanding. This is my thing. But there is another thing that you need to be aware of, is that God talks about that be people that like to cause problems or create havoc or create confusion, or they're basically tearing apart the community. And that time, then you have to address the behavior. Those may be hypocrites or not, but the behavior need to be addressed, because otherwise the community is going to fall apart if you don't address it. If you don't basically stand up for that kind of behavior, that kind of actions, then the community is going to fall apart. And then there must be people coming and addressing it, forming a committee, having separate discussion in order to make sure that this kind of behavior is not tolerated within a community. That's to me, that's important. That when I say fight back, and that their actions are damaging the community, then you have to stand up and say, what, we cannot accept this. We cannot go along with this, and we need to pay attention. We need to stop this. You need to stop this. You need to change this behavior. You need to change this action. Whatever it needs to be done to make the community come to the state of peace, and going back to focusing on God and remembering God, and doing studies and learning, because in such a bad environment, a toxic environment, nobody can learn anything. It's a satanic environment, in my view.
Yeah, no, I
Peace.
agree. Peace.
We've all, most of us have heard the cliche principle above personality. In that sense, the principle is the Quran and God's guidance. Inasmuch as that a person deviates, quote unquote, they intentionally, consciously, and repeatedly engage in behaviors that contradict what God tells us in the Quran, to the effect that it poisons a community. We are obligated, this is our responsibility as submitters, to bring that to light. And our focus should be on bringing that to light in the context of the Quran, and individuals that insist upon being outed, so to speak, as in opposition to the truth. Now, what I wanted to say very briefly is that if an individual, quote unquote, personality is not actively doing that, uh, there is no need for other submitters to lambast that person or continually, uh, if you will, continually label that person. Their actions describe their behaviors. Lastly, it is not our responsibility to bring a person into the fold of submission or the submitter community. If I make a mistake, if I am wrong and my ego is such that I will not admit that I'm wrong and I distance myself or find myself ejected from the community of submitters, it is my obligation and responsibility to seek forgiveness and guidance from God. And it is my responsibility to approach that community in large and by God's leave, reunite with them. God knows best. Thank you.
I got a couple of verses. Just wanted to read the one that Mikhail put. I think this is the basic laws regulating our relations with unbelievers. Right? It says God does not enjoin you from befriending those who do not fight you because of religion and do not evict you from your homes. May befriend them and be equitable towards them. God loves the equitable. Meaning, if someone's not fighting you, even if they're a disbeliever, you can be friends with them. You can be equitable with them. It continues, God enjoins you only from befriending those who fight you because of religion, evict you from your homes, and band together with others to banish you. You shall not befriend them. Those who befriend them are the transgressors. Meaning that, this is if someone's fighting you because of religion, banding together with others to banish you, evicting you from your homes, we are not to extend, kindness and friendship to such people. Now, these are people who are unbelievers. The next category is the hypocrites. If you go to 488 and 89, it gives us the requirements there. It says, why should you divide yourselves into two groups regarding the hypocrites among you? So God's acknowledging that in, groups of believers, there's going to be hypocrites, and God is saying, don't divide over them. God is the one who condemned them because of their own behavior. You want to guide those who are sent astray by God. Whomever God sends astray, you can never find a way to guide them. But even among these people, God puts a stipulation, says they wish that you disbelieve as they have disbelieved. Then you become equal, and says, do not consider them friends unless they mobilize along with you in the cause of God. And that if they mobilize in the cause of God, we can even consider the hypocrites friends. It says, if they turn against you, you shall fight them, and you may kill them when they encounter them in war. You shall not accept them as friends or allies. And so God's putting the stipulations regarding even the hypocrites, that as long as they're mobilizing the cause of God, they're not fighting us, that even we can befriend, we can treat them like we treat the believers. Then if you go to one last verse, this is Surah 49, verse 9. So let's say that the person isn't a hypocrite, right? They're just a very aggressive believer. There's a rule in the Quran for what we do with these people. It says, if two groups of believers fought with each other, you shall reconcile them. So it means, hey, I see two groups of believers fighting. The tendency that I think some submitters fall into is like, oh, I don't want to get involved. God is saying, look, if you're the neutral party, you get involved. And says if one group aggresses against the other, that it's the duty of all those who aren't involved to fight the aggressing group until they submit to God's command. Right? There is no being neutral. If we see aggression happening, we have to basically fight against it. It says, once they submit, you shall reconcile the two groups equitably. You shall maintain justice. God loves those who are just. So these are the three requirements. We're dealing with the believers, the disbelievers, the hypocrites, and the believers, right? And with each one, it's roughly the same outcome. As long as they're not fighting us, if they're not attacking us, they're not banishing us, we can be friends with them, we can be equitable with them. If they transgress that limit, we're allowed to retaliate in kind, and we can never sit back and basically see one group aggressing without addressing the aggressing party.
So then thought experiment or thought is if you have a certain position, a certain understanding, someone rejects that understanding, challenges it, disagrees with it, whatever, are you now, if you take that as a personal quote unquote attack, are you now, you know, go, at what point does it become ego, and at what point does it become justified? Like that you're able to like, oh, you're attacking me, you're attacking my beliefs, you're attacking my God, blah 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 blah, just because you have a different interpretation, different understanding. You know, like where's the ego and where's the truth in this? To Because a lot of subjectivity comes in, a lot of ego comes in, and someone can easily be like, oh, you're not in agreement with me, you are the devil. So how to recognize that from a proper reaction, and recognizing that someone's not actually attacking you because they're disagreeing with you.
Yeah, to me, I see that as just like someone who is insecure in their position, right? Someone has a wrong understanding on something. We address the understanding. We don't try to make it personal in that sense, and it's fine. Someone can have a difference of understanding. Uh, the truth prevails, the false advantages, but it's the behavior that is what we monitor, we police, right? If they're operating in the framework again of what a submitter should, as far as using the Quran as the only source of religious law, using the messenger's teachings as kind of explanations from this stuff, they're going through that process. They just happen to come to a difference of understanding. We have to be able to have civil discourse. If every time there's a dispute regarding, what something means, that causes, saying, "Oh, this person is a hypocrite. We have to fight them," and this and that, it's going to just create a perpetual
Division.
isms
Yeah.
in divisions in submitter communities. It's just not sustainable.
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm trying to compile more verses together. If you guys know them off it, if you guys know any more that I could be adding to, but like I'm creating kind of like a storyline here between these 4 verses so far, which it's in regards to every individual that would, like, when Rashad tells us, oh, treat every person as a potential believer, and every person is going to grow at different paces. They're going to accept submission at different rates. Some might take months, other might take years, other might do it overnight. And so these 4 verses, God tells us, "O you who believe, although billahi minash shaitanir rajim, O you who believe, do not ask about matters which, if revealed to you prematurely, it would hurt you. If you ask about them in light of the Quran, they will become obvious to you. God has deliberately overlooked them." So God here tells us there's some things that you're not meant to know right away because you might take it the wrong way. And we can see some examples of like people who automatically reject submission because they don't agree with one of the revelations or the interpretations that Rashad brings regarding like the age of 40, regarding Khalifa on earth, any of these things. And so we know that everyone is supposed to go at their own pace, in accordance with God's will. God tells us that you will move from stage to stage. God reminds us that there's no compulsion in religion, so we can't force the stages upon them. We can't force people. We can simply act as reminders. And then he reminds the believers, refrain from blocking every path, seeking to repel those who believe from the path of God. So we have people here who are searching the path of God, going down this path. And if we try to like force and break the other commandments, then we can be those who repel people from believing. By making it crooked, by saying, no, you have to accept this, you have to do this. I'm not talking about the revelations, but when you start tying your own outside, I don't want to bring the concept of like politics, but these types of other ways to approach the things, and then these types of mindsets of like forcing things upon others instead of like just giving the message and letting people go at their own pace. Like, is this? I'm trying to formulate this more, or bring this to light. If you guys know verses that would complement God's system in this regards, to be patient. You may also fight them to eliminate oppression, to worship God for it. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say one of the, kind of and again, the Quran deals with the extreme examples. So when we're dealing with the mundane in our day to day, it becomes easy to determine what we're supposed to do. The most extreme example is that of Moses, Aaron, and the children of Israel. Right here, we have individuals, they formulated a calf and they're worshiping it and calling it God, right? And despite this, this absolute egregious behavior, something that's so abhorrent, Aaron was like, "Man, am I going to be dividing the children of Israel if I condemn these people like outright?" This is on par to the 99 sheep versus one sheep with David. And God is saying that even under these extreme conditions, where it's like clear, like, look, these guys have gone astray. Aaron still had that level of care to make sure he's not acting too hasty. Because if you look at even what Moses did, right? Moses didn't go and have an interrogation session with every single, children of Israel to see if they still had adoration for the calf or this or that. He found the one culprit who kind of like sparked this whole thing, and he, banished him. That's it. And this is a very extreme case. So the concept is, it's like, let's look at our day to day. Hey, someone has a difference of understanding of something, and we equate that to the same thing as like worshiping the calf. That's a gross, comparison. And my thought is, let's say someone goes and says, "Look, I don't agree with the age of 40." I give them time, but at the same time, I have boundaries. If they're going out and actively fighting and making material against this and saying that the messenger is wrong, it's like, okay, this isn't no longer you just have a difference of understanding. Like, you're now actively fighting against, God's messenger, in my opinion. But if someone says, "Hey, look, I have this, I don't see it that way. I'm struggling with this," and they're open to having dialogue and this and that, I think that's fine. But once it crosses over to that other side, where they're actively saying, "No, he's just fundamentally wrong, and I refuse to accept it," at that point, then it's like, okay, it's not a question of where they stand on the topic. They've kind of fixed themselves into it. And if tomorrow they change their mind, then it's like, okay, bygones be bygones.
Peace be upon you.
Anyone else
Think-
want to add? Oh, good.
No. I know Brother Raju was wanting to say something for a while. He said he was in queue. So, Brother Raju, it's your
No,
turn.
peace be upon you. I think as it's very clear from the Quran, we see God's system never changes. It's kind of history we see, but just in different era. When it comes to God's teachings and how people deviated, so certain leaders started to innovate. The God system never changed. The idea is when it comes to the submitters, what I was scratching my head or I was thinking about it. I saw certain submitters with long time. A few are not here right now in the previous server. 24 years in submission. Another person, but yet they are. When it's you see some of them they have financial problems. Some of them they have health problems. Some of the health problems are like chronic, or I don't know if it's the correct term to use it, terminally ill, that is literally can eventually kill the person. But we know, of course, God personally signs the death certificate. That is another subject. And it's very interesting when I discuss with them, without exception, they're disputing the fact about the promises of God, which is God promises perfect health, wealth, and happiness. And this is all over the Quran. Those who I'm paraphrasing, those who believe, lead a righteous life, will have nothing to fear, nor will they grieve. Clarified by the Master of Covenant in multiple sermons and the Quran study sessions. Yet people dispute. So this is like to me, it's kind of a core belief. Okay, yes, I can say, brother or sister, this is what God's promise. We have to believe in it so it can happen for you. Right? We are not talking about these extreme cases. Maybe someone is now 60, 70-year-old, they came to submission. Maybe they have to pay for something, then get redeemed. No, generally speaking, this is how we understand from the Quran. When you submit to God, there will be certain tests, ups and downs, right? We have some example of it in the Quran. but ultimately you will win. But in other words, heaven starts here. And this is one on the example. Actually, there are many other subjects, but this is one example I saw that people, despite the clear teachings, the verses of the Quran, and clarification by the Master of Covenant, they have hard time believing in that. And it's very interesting. May God guide them. I see that same people are having big problems, chronic. There is no chronic health issues in God's kingdom. There is no food intolerance in God's kingdom. There is no, all are restorable. This is what we see in the. It's become my command log. But if you look in the scripture, in the Bible, in the Quran, when you look at the stories, their health was restored even twice as much. So this is where I found it problematic, because certain individuals, they're long time in submitter, yet when it's come to this, one of the crucial understanding of the Quran and God's qualities, God's promises, they reject it indirectly.
Peace. May I like to respond to that? And in part, it's like a question. A person, God willing, can be a submitter, and they can have a chronic illness. In Surah 2, verse 156, I seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. God says, when an affliction befalls them, they say, we belong to God, and to him we are returning. By God's leave, one of my understandings of this verse is that there can be afflictions that befall a person. And what they have to remember is that they belong to God. And this life is temporary, and we all are returning to God. God also says in the Quran, we know Abraham said, when I get sick, my Lord heals me. So I make by God's leave, a distinction between getting sick, a temporary illness, or a condition that in effect can be lethal. We know that death is only known by God. The time of death is only known by God. And when the angel of death comes, it's neither put forward nor is it delayed. As you're saying, Brother Roger, all are restorable. Right, they are restorable. But obviously, death is a fact. None of us can doubt that. And on the physical level, there's certain type of physical afflictions and illnesses that befall a person by God's will that inevitably, obviously lead to death. So that's my point. My point is that there are certain conditions and afflictions. Of course, God is in total control. And the submitter remembers God, they belong to God, and they're going to return to God. Peace. Thank you.
Please, mashallah. Yeah, I agree with you. That is, of course, this is, but there are some of the individuals I know that are, like, say, 12, 13 years suffering from the kidney issue, for example. 12, 13 years, God responds to his servants. I can never swallow this. I can never accept that. This is God's promise. You return to him day and night. You fall prostrate, you cry. Every cell in our bodies is controlled by God. I can never, it just doesn't go in my, that no, it's never restorable. It's always, we can pray to God, any illness. Rashad further expand our understanding that God's command is done. Angels are the best surgeons. They can fix anything in your body, for example. But the thing is that we have to believe in that for us to happen. That is a different case. Someone fall ill, they go hospital, they pass away, whatever. But even that, Rashad says, for the believers, the last, I don't know, 5, 10 years of their life will be enjoyable. They're like preparing to go for a vacation or something. Unlike the disbelievers, Rashad says the last 10, 15 years of their life will be miserable. So these are something that we have to look as a whole, what God says in the Quran, what Rashad, when he expanded our understanding on that. But my point is that we have to believe in it for it to happen, and we have to work hard towards it, God willing.
Salam alaikum. Partially what Rashad explains is from Quran, but how we go about it, our approach, and how we deal with each other about it. That needs to be righteous. We cannot be judgmental. Each person is to judge their own situation. We see that father of Joseph, because of weakness, emotional weakness, he got blind, and yes, God restored it. And some of them, we have submitters that die from illnesses too. It is not for us to judge where they go. And I've seen that this explanation of Rashad is being abused outside light of Quran to judge submitters where they go, whether they go to hell or heaven, and to judge submitters when they go through different types of difficulty. And they overemphasize on health, whereas Rashad Khan, he explains any type of problem. So it is for each person to reflect. And sometimes it's seen, sometimes it's even weakness, like the father of Joseph. It is not for us to go force it on each other or judge each other's life.
I agree, sister. Definitely, we cannot say ultimate destiny only known to God. There might be people whom me and you today we see maybe they're disbelieving or doing wrong things. A few years down the line, we don't know. Maybe they become better than you and me. But the ultimate destiny is absolutely we cannot. That is only known to God.
If I could add to this, this concept of think of this: any sin we commit, at the end of the day, we have to pay for it. And there's different ways we pay for it, either through repentant reform if it was done out of ignorance. God transforms, the sins into credit, or we do good deeds. It says the good deeds wipe out the bad deeds. So, hey, I committed a sin, I want to atone for it, so I go and I, give some charity or try to do something, in the cause of God. God says, that the good deeds again wipe out the bad deeds. And the last one is that, hey, we have to pay for it. And we have one of two choices. We either pay for it in this life, in which case we're redeemed in the hereafter, or if we don't pay for it in this life, then we have to carry that sin for all of eternity. And I think for general, like, yeah, it's never about, hey, let me just judge someone for the sake of judging. It's, as submitters, we want the best for all of us. And if there's something that I'm doing in my life that's causing me hardship or pain or something like that, that I should want to try to figure out, how to fix the issue. I can try to fix the symptoms, in this worldly sense. But if I could find the root of the cause, then I'll fix all my problems. And I think that, yeah, there's this bad tendency in the sense, and I've seen this in submitter communities, where people are literally hiding, stuff that they're personally struggling with because they don't want people to think that that's a reflection of their souls. To me, that is absolutely toxic. I've seen people where they were suffering through severe ailments and they tried their hardest to hide that from other people, the very people that you would think you could go to for a support and help, because they don't want to think badly of them. And I see that as more of a cultural issue than I do in the sense of saying, hey, we need to hide the truth. Because if someone's going through hardship, we want to be there for them. And if there's something that they're struggling with in their life, we want to basically be able to help them. Because at the end of the day, we want all of us, God willing, to make it to paradise. So I do think that there's this bad stigma that we just need to move past. If we see people carrying out that conduct where it's like, oh, look, this thing happened to this individual because of X, right? That's just wrong. We don't know what's going on in people's personal lives, what decisions they're making, what thoughts they're having, and this and that. But what we should want to do is try to help each other, right? And I think that's more of a cultural aspect that as a community we need to maintain. So.
MashaAllah, brother. That generally speaking, the concept, okay, each individual cases might be different, but some will be redeemed. No, that is up to God. But we as submitters, we should strongly believe in God's promises that, we do our best. We know we can never be perfect, but we will work towards that, towards becoming an utmost submitter. We have to put all our efforts. And God's promise is true. You will be protected. Yeah, we might get headache here and there. stuff like that. But someone who is suffering, like say 12 years in a chronic illness to this point of sweating, suffering, cannot eat certain foods, that's a different thing. I will look, what I'm doing. I will look what I'm doing with my submission, if I'm suffering, let's say, 12 years for a chronic disease, for example. And we do not help them by being nice. This is what I remind myself. So I remind them, brother, look, dig deeper, see what are you doing. Are you paying your zakat on time? Are you, the nature of the job you have? Are you making, lawful money? Every aspect of our life, we have to dig in, God willing, and God's promise true.
Assalamu alaikum. Can I make a comment? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Please,
go
go ahead.
Of course. Yeah, please.
Oh yeah. So kind of similar. I mean, pertaining to this topic, I often, it's not even about like the worldly things. I often sometimes doubt myself. I don't know, like, because I see myself like certain traits. I've been submitter for many years already, and it's scary sometimes to see like certain traits like I'm not getting better at something. Like I don't have the trait of a believer that I don't see, like God says in the Quran. And I wonder sometimes, am I a hypocrite? Why am I not changing? I'm doing like a lot of the commandments, but then what am I doing wrong? I'm not even talking about like health or something. It's just like we can also like examine our qualities. God tells us about the qualities of the hypocrites in the Quran, qualities of the believers, and I see myself not attaining certain qualities. I keep doing the same mistake, and I don't know. Like sometimes I get discouraged, and I don't know why. Like, why am I not changing? What do you guys think about that? Do you guys ever feel like that?
So so I understand correctly. Basically, you're seeing that you're falling into the same patterns over and over. That you feel like you're not progressing.
Yeah, in some traits, yeah, in certain.
I can share two thoughts on this. One is, okay, the further along you get into any discipline, the improvements become more and more marginal, right? Meaning, like, if let's say, for instance, you're trying to learn the guitar, those first few months, your delta of growth and understanding is going to be huge. But let's say you've been playing the guitar for 10 years, right? Actively, how much more do you have to work in order to get 1% better? And I think that's one of the things, like, when we come to submission, we see this huge transformation. But then the longer we are, you realize, like, yeah, those changes aren't going to be this extreme because you've already purified so much. Now you really have to work on these, like, refinement aspects. That's the first thing. So don't be discouraged in that sense, right? The second thing is, this is something I always ask myself. What am I doing differently? In the sense, if I'm constantly getting the same results over and over, am I doing anything differently to expect that the results would be different? The verse that we read earlier, Surah 13, verse 11, says God does not change the decision of the direction of any people until they make the decision to change. It's like, let's say, for instance, I have a problem, backbiting among my coworkers. It's okay. What am I doing to make sure I'm not in that circumstance? Right? Maybe, I try to take lunch differently, or, I do some active effort to try to alter from me falling into that. And I would say that if there's something that you say, hey, I have this shortcoming in X, Y, and Z, it's like, okay, what could you do to create a barrier between you and falling into that, transgression? And from my standpoint, it's like, okay, that's showing that you actively care to make a difference. Another one is setting up a negatives incentive. Hey, look, for each time that I do this, I'm going to, let's say, for instance, like, not eat ice cream at night because, let's say if I make a rule for myself, I say, hey, if I lose my patience today, I'm not going to have ice cream tonight, right? That's like my little delicacy. I get a scoop of ice cream and I eat it. Then this way I created a negative incentive to kind of incentivize me not to do it. Or you can set up a positive incentive, right? You say, hey, look, okay, I want to do this. Okay, if I do this, I'm going to permit myself to do, buy this book I wanted to get, but I didn't want to spend the money for. Right. So you can kind of set up your own incentive system. And to me, it's more this aspect of saying, look, I want to reach this goal, this ideal. How do I create barriers to not get there? Right. or sorry, to refrain from some sin, to not get there, and then how do I create the right incentives to get into the direction I want? Yeah, I don't know if that helps, but that's kind of my personal approach.
Mashallah, brother.
Thank you,
Okay.
Masha.
I also comment about that. I think, it's not very for each submitter, sincerity is the key. I think most people who Satan adorn the wrong things in their eyes are people with ego, people who are away from the Quran and so on. We as submitters, I don't think it must be very complicated. For example, I give you an example. Are we thinking about God the majority of the day? I believe our actions speak louder than words. I can give a nice khutbah. We can talk about very nice verses, share with each other. But when it comes to the actions, this is very important. Let's say there's a Quran study. I don't know, Persian, Russian. Am I keeping time to join that? What is pulling me back from going to join that Quran study, for example, or for the Jummah? Or why when it comes to Zakat, I have seen certain individuals like delaying for, even though amount is not small. So each and every direction, we compare our life with the Quranic facts. So at the end of the day, we divide our day literally, 50-50, more than 50%. We have to remember God the most, love Him the most. That is where we can be like kind of assure ourselves that we don't fall into idol worship. However, I caught myself many, many times. There was exhibition or whatever. I said, oh my God, I didn't think about God most of the day. So these gifts from God, like the contact prayer, Salat, the community, the Quran studies, the reading of the Quran, all these are basically blessings from God to help us to remember Him the majority of the day. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that our actions are important, shows what is more important to us.
MashaAllah, that was said beautifully. We have to read Quran cover to cover and be with righteous submitters and try to improve is a journey. But to only take that explanation of messenger, perfect health, perfect wealth, perfect security, and judge each other, it has created chaos in the community rather than judging ourselves, and it's a misrepresentation of explanation of messenger. That must be taken in light of the whole Quran for each of us for our own lives. Now, if somebody comes and consults with us, we can nicely give our own 2 cents, but I never judge a submitter that dies with a health problem, where they go. So just like verses of Quran, that we have to take it in the light of the whole Quran. That's what Dr. Rashad taught us. If we take one verse such as follow God and follow messenger, and that's what the whole Islamic community are doing, and they've left the rest of the Quran, we can go astray. So we need to put all the verses together, and each person needs to judge. It may be a blessing in disguise. It may be a test. We don't know. It may be a weakness, like father of Joseph, or a sin. So we don't want to misrepresent it. Take it and then start judging others. It has created chaos in past 30 years. And some people, they hide their problems. They don't dare to, come and ask for help. They're afraid of being judged. So that's misrepresentation of this explanation, which is blessing from God.
Please, sister. I think this is the point. Just a quick one, brother, with that. That, of course, we know that. But at that point, because Rashad said there is no exception, and we look in the light of the Quran, as you said, all over the Quran mentioned, those who believe, lead a righteous life, will have nothing to fear, nor will they grieve. And of course, we know will be tested. Rashad further clarified, I can share the audio if you want, God willing, that there is no exception. If you get a headache, you've done something. However, I agree with you. At the end of the day, we have to worry about our own neck. We don't want to sit and just point finger at others. In fact, we want to remind them and try to help them out, you know. So that case, I agree with you that in some communities or certain things became unfortunately too extreme and toxic.
Yeah, I think we have to be conscientious not to go to one extreme or the other, right? This is what Satan wants. He wants to push people to one extreme or the other. One extreme is, hey, we become judgmental, right? The other extreme is that we can't judge. Um, my takeaway from it is, at least when we're quote unquote judging other people, we have to do it A, out of sincerity, right? Like there has to be a reason behind it, but then B, it's out of love, like when it's towards another submitter. Like if I see a submitter who's falling into certain transgressions, and I'm trying to give them advice or help them out. I'm not doing this to say, oh, I'm better than you or something like that. It's because you don't want to see your family members going down something that's going to cause them pain and suffering. And I think that's the important piece, where it's like you're more interested in the well-being of others. And the example that Brandy gave with the lot, I think it serves twofold. One is that he sees his community members, going through such levels of just like a heinousness, that he's offering, his daughters, right, in the sense of like saying, look, there's a righteous way that you can go about this. But then secondly, the it's to prove a point. But I think that that's a critical thing. It's like it's showing that, look, he's doing this out of a place of love. If you look at the example of Abraham, the angels come to him, say, hey, we're gonna destroy this town. His first act is to defend. And he's told to refrain, and he does. But it goes to show, like, if we're going to err, err on that side. And I think it's just this is something that we just have to instill in the culture, where the hope is that people can be open with one another, right? Not be concerned that they're going to be looked down upon and this and that, where we can help each other become better submitters, better stewards of God's religion. So. I can share just something really small, like to add to what Raju said, as far as how we can, what we can do to see if we're on, things are, we're acting accordingly, rather than just doing just an assessment. Okay, am I doing the basic requirements of the religion? Let's assume you are doing your contact prayers. For me personally, I ask myself, how reverent am I during my contact prayers? If I notice that I'm having troubles focusing, and it's not just one off, but I'm seeing a pattern in that sense, then it means, hey, if these few minutes that I'm dedicating to God, I can't stay focused, how less focused am I the rest of the day? And I really try to use those as the indicators for how much reverence I have, during the 24-hour cycle, depending on how I am during those few minutes when I'm, imploring God.
MashaAllah.
You know what's an interesting thought though, that Raju, you bringing up this topic? You just realize, like, look, when Jesus comes, he's talking about the good news, right? And he's talking about eternal life. And it's very clear that he says, look, the kingdom of God starts here, but people for 2,000 years weren't sure what that means. God's messenger of the covenant comes to clarify, saying, look, you can have paradise here on earth. If you do the things
Oh
that God
my
is
God, brother.
happy with.
Exactly. This was what is my mind. You start talking about it. MashaAllah.
If you do these things, God is going to basically send his angels. They're going to watch over you, meaning anything that happens in your life from there on out is strictly for your good. I think the mistake that people make, though, is they think that, look, I'm just going to be sitting on a beach, sipping delicious drinks and an easy life. It's like, no, that's dull. That's boring, right? The aspect is that we want to be better. And you're going to go through training. You're going to go through rigorous training, and it's going to push you, but you're going to come out feeling so much better about yourself. I think a lot of times people they equate that training with punishment. Imagine, like, say for instance, you want to be part of the Olympic team, and you have to get up at 5 a.m. and you have to jump into like a cold pool or run laps. And you have two perspectives. One perspective is, why is this coach punishing me? It's like, no, no. A, we signed up for this, but B, this is the regiment we need to do in order to be better, right? To reach our potential. And I think sometimes we conflate, that aspect of the training we have to go, the hardships we have to go through as a form of punishment when it's not punishment. It's designed for our good.
Absolutely. Excellent. I mean, look at the examples in the Quran, like Jonah, for example. It's really, we cannot imagine if you get swallowed, that terror, end up in the fish belly. He implored, he was restored, blessed, and the people who believe. What happened to Job? Same thing. We see a little bit more details in Bible. God knows, but we know that he really went through a tough time. What did he say? He prayed to God. God responded to him. The believers will end up victorious. The only thing that is pulling us back or slowing down our progress is ourselves when it comes to following God's commandments, and basically examining ourselves, and again getting rid of anything that is unquranic in our lives. Because remember, the contact prayers, I don't know, 20, 25 minutes is taking our time during the day. Okay, let's say 15, 20 minutes, half an hour Quran reading here, maybe half an hour recitation in the morning. Still, we have, throughout the day, we have to try to remember God, and we can make our jobs, our families, everything, a blessing or a chance to remember God. MashaAllah, Alhamdulillah. We are all familiar with these phrases. So the whole idea is to keep God first every day when we wake up. Today my goal is to worship God alone. Today, this week, we examine ourselves. In this way, we will end up victorious, God willing, kings and queens on earth. This is God's promise. And these health problems and all these things, you will reach, God willing, to a level you will forget about hospitals and stuff like that. you know, especially when it comes to, there will be no chronic issues or whatever. It will disappear. You will get healed. For God, his commands are done. You have to believe that. I have an issue, health issue. I implore God day and night. I'll cry. I never despair. As I implore you, my Lord, I will never despair. And God responds to his servants.
Funny, I was reading some passages in the Bible, and there's this theme where basically, if you do the things that God is pleased with, He's gonna make your ways successful. But if you break His commandments, no matter how much blood, sweat, and tears you pour into your work, it's not gonna come out successful. And we have this example in the Quran, the Surah 68, regarding the owners of the garden, that they were so sure that their dedication, getting up early, working hard was going to be the key to their success, that they're never going to be poor again. And because they didn't realize, like, no, God's the one who dictates the outcomes, they came and they saw that their entire harvest was wiped out. And that's the key. If you make God the priority, you do the things that God is pleased with, you trust that whatever path he takes you, he's going to make it successful in ways you can't imagine. But it just requires that trust in the process. The second the devil comes to someone and says, "Look, I got a shortcut for you," that God's way is just, it's too difficult. Here's your shortcut. You need to, break some of God's commandments, and in return, you're going to get the reward much faster. This is literally what the devil promised Adam in paradise, telling him, "Hey, if you just eat from this tree, just break this one simple command, you're going to get what you want much faster." And the thing is, we never fall, God willing, fall victim for that we realize, like, yeah, okay, there's the correct way of doing this, which is God's way. It might appear on surface level that it's going to take longer, be harder, but that's the one that's going to give us the success. We try to use the devil's approach to find a shortcut, to circumvent God's rules and laws, we're going to suffer. This kind of touches back to the previous topic regarding how we deal with people. You know, it's like, yeah, just be harsh and stern and dismiss them and don't put up with any crap and, you know, get rid of them. It's like, okay, but is that God's system? No, it's not, right? God has a system. You apply God's system, it's going to work out favorably. If you don't, you know, you're going to suffer the consequences.
Yes, mashallah. And also the path is very narrow. You know, Prophet Muhammad is a good example. You know, after all is been through, you know, he was persecuted, and all his revelations were coming one by one. They have to memorize, preach it. He'd hide in the cave. All this. Still, God says, had you sided with them just a little bit, we would have stopped the revelations to you. None of them could have helped you against you. I'm paraphrasing. In other words, they would have gone to hell. This shows that we have a very narrow path, you know, a very no room for error, basically. And thanks God for the gift of repentance.
Yeah, there's many ways to do the wrong thing. Even then, you know, God has there's a spectrum where we can say, look, you go on one extreme, you're transgressing. You go on the other extreme, you're transgressing. But then there's a, you know, boundary in between, a spectrum in between, where God is saying, like, look, this is you're in the level of something that's permissible. But even then, there's degrees. Simple one is, you know, you see someone in need, a multitude of things. The worst is you insult them, you attack them, right? And then you're neutral, or hey, you just, like, you know, you're kind to them, you're compassionate, you're kind to them, compassionate, and then you help them out, you know, financially, or if they need food or water supplies or something like that. So it's like you see that there's a right and a wrong, and then in between, you know, kind of what the different ways that someone can approach it. The aspect is we're constantly trying to figure out, okay, how can we be better? Salem, are you trying to speak? Oh, good.
She doesn't know.
Oh, Salem, are you trying to? Your voice is a little muffled. I can't. Would love to hear, yeah, your comment if you have something to say about this.
Sounds like a hot mic.
Oh dear. We can shift over to announcements unless anyone else wants to make a comment regarding this.
I wanted to comment on this aspect of like changing within yourself, the verse that God talks about, such as getting rid of bad habits, whether it's relying on things that we don't like, or whether it's wanting to improve a habit. The thing is that it's a very, very long topic, but I'm just gonna post like this quick image and things like that. This comes from a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear, and he breaks down the physiological process that happens in the brain when it comes to setting habits and breaking habits. And one of the main things that we have to do is we have to apply consciousness. You have to be present and in the moment, and you have to recognize exactly what it is that ticks us, what it is that leads us into that action. Whether it's eating sugar when we're stressed, whether it's smoking, whether it's lashing out at people, whatever it is that we want, anything that you already have established as your system. If you're like, I don't like this, I don't want to do this anymore, then you have to start to slow down and recognize, how am I always ending up in this position? What's leading me into this position? And it takes a lot of like, okay, well, if I'm eating a lot of sugar, why am I eating a lot of sugar? Okay, it's because I get anxious, or I get these cravings. Why am I getting these cravings? Well, I've noticed that these cravings are coming whenever I'm trying to go to study, or whenever I'm dealing with people, or whenever I'm stressed at work. Okay, and what's causing the stress at work? Oh, because of these people. Okay, so you start to break it down, But at some point you realize, okay, the outcome is that I'm eating this. So I have to, in order to be able to stop eating the food that's harming me, I have to be able to be conscious enough that I start seeing the rise in my stress and my anxiety. And when you start becoming more and more conscious of that elevation within you, you have to, okay, now I know what's going to happen next because I've already seen this pattern multiple times. I need to stop myself before I go down the roller coaster that usually brings me into destruction. And so when you start becoming more and more aware, so like say, for example, in the concept of ego, right? You know, if some of us go into arguments with people or certain personalities or certain comments or whatever, and we see that certain natures can bring out the worst in us, we have to, oh, I see myself getting angry. I see myself getting defensive. I gotta stop here. And so either you can choose to walk away, you can choose to bite your tongue, you can choose a different path, or you can, like God gives us many du'as. God, please cool my heart, guide my untie my tongue so that people can understand, and please clear my speech, please soften my heart, please let me see the light in the darkness. Any of these types of du'as for asking God for help in these types of situations. And the more and more present you are and the more and more conscious you are, you can start seeing what it is that continues to put you in this position where you keep making the decision to harm yourself, to harm yourself, to harm yourself. And so when you start recognizing the cue, which is the first step in all of this, which is begins this trigger, recognize the cue, recognize the chain reaction that's going to happen with this, and put a stop to it. You continuously do this multiple times. This is what's called neuroplasticity. You begin to all the cells that normally are working together to, oh look, we're under attack. Fire off the insults, fire off the emotional reactions, fire off the personal attacks, fire off the verses. Like, whoa. Okay, let's stop these neurons from firing together. I want a different reaction. You do that for a long enough period, your brain begins to divide these connections because you're choosing now not to go down this path, and you're asking your body and you're asking yourself to have a different reaction. And the more and more you train in that path, the more and more you'll develop that reaction as a natural reaction instead of the one that you're trying to get away from. That's more of what I talk about when it talks about changing within ourselves. Granted, it's all easy in theory to say and think about. It's very, very difficult when you have it, because at this point, sometimes there's some things that I'm very, very conscious of and I'm still having a hard time with. And I like the way that Francis put it one time, when God is in control of everything, because I'm starting to submit to that idea more and more each time, in the sense that the way that Brother Francis had put it is that when he says in the Quran, it is not you killed them, it is God who killed them, right? And it's not that he pulled the finger for you, or he's the one that committed, but in the sense of like those who seek the light of God, those who seek the mercy of God in moments of despair, God will put a shroud around you to protect you from the whispers of Satan, from the things that will bring you harm. Those who don't choose God and choose their ego and whatnot, then they will be set down the satanic path, and God will not put a shroud over you. And when you don't have that shroud and that protection from God, you are more likely to fall under the temptations of your ego, of satanic whispers, of things that tend to mislead us. When you choose God in moments of despair, I really need to change this. Please help me, God. You're asking him to protect you from the whispers, protect you from yourself. The more and more you rely on him, and there are some verses to support me in this. I don't remember them off the top of my head. One of them is kind of like having the mantle of righteousness as opposed to just ordinary clothes. This mantle of righteousness, I see it as this protection that the more and more you do righteous actions, the more and more you implore on him when you're desperate, the more and more he supports you. The more and more he gives you his light, the more and more protection he gives you. This imploring of God is extremely vital. There's a verse that talks about imploring God. Sadly, I don't remember it. Maybe it'll come up down the line. But this constant concept of really, really relying on God in every single despair, mixed in with the psychology and the reality and how the creations works in, is this balance of like everything that we do it in the name of God. Every time we ask for help, we do it in the name of God. Everything that we're trying to change, we do it in the name of God, because he wants what's best for us. This process of purification, God loves those who purify themselves, is you're doing it for God, with the intention for God, because you want to be better for God. You know, going back to the original, one of the first questions for Brother Alpha was like, hey, what about, you know, setting the intention in this for debates and things like that? Is what are you doing this for? To prove to people that we're right, or to to serve God in the best way possible, however it may be. Even those types of intention makes a difference, because like we know that things are outside of our control. And when we start to like really become, now I'm bringing it back to the whole consciousness of changing habits, it's we have to be still and really see what it is that happens that allows us to go astray. This is why fasting is so important, because it's not just fasting of food, it's fasting of knowledge, it's fasting of even actions, it's fasting of thoughts. This is why dhikr is so important, because the dhikr shuts down the brain and focuses on one word and focuses on God for a prolonged period of time. The more and more we do this, the more and more we empty ourselves, the more and more we allow God's wisdom to come in. It's kind of like a cup being filled with water, and you're the cup. The water is the senseless garbage that we hear on a day-to-day from information, from watching TikToks and YouTubes and movies and things like that, gossip and vain talks. Fasting is the water evaporating, and that emptiness, now you allow God's wisdom to come in. This is why so many of the prophets repeatedly fasted in order to be able to hear God. It strengthened the connections, which is why it's one of the pillars of submission. So you start to be able to put everything together. Anyways, God knows best, guys. Peace.
Praise God. Anyone else want to make a comment, add anything, or should we bring up announcements? Anyone got any announcements they want to bring up with the group? It's open.
I have an announcement. Peace be upon you guys.
Peace.
Sorry, this was not. It's not really a good place for me to talk, but I have to make an announcement anyways. Okay. Peace be upon you guys. So this.
You cut out for everyone else too?
Yeah, he's out for me.
The suspense.
Dun, dun, dun.
Probably got a phone call or something.
Wow.
Okay. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great. Praise God. All right. So this Friday, so like what, 6 days from now, there's the New York meetup. It's going to last from Friday technically to Sunday. Sunday is going to be the goodbyes in the morning. We already have a list of people coming, and people can still let me know that they're coming if they want. It's going to be in New York City. Address, if you need it, just ping me. We're going to meet around 11 or 12 on Friday. The details are escaping me right now because I'm a little bit distracted here. We will have our Jamaat together as a group. People are flying in from, I think, even Canada, so all over the country. Praise be to God. And it's going to be a blast, God willing. We're going to have speakers. We're going to have dhikr, Quran studies, presentations, sermons, even the trivia game and prizes. Now, so I've designed the game. I've designed the questions. I'm not going to be participating in the game because that would be cheating. And hopefully it'll be a laugh. It'll test people's wits. I think I'm making also multiple versions of the game, so there's like an easy game and then a hard game for the people who really want to test their mettle. God willing. I plan on recording it, God willing, and I hope everyone takes a lot of pictures so we can put it on the websites and broadcast it for the world to see live. So whoever's coming, I hope you look good, because you will be on live for YouTube, God willing. That's the dream, at least. Plan. Anyone interested, please ping me. We're also taking donations both for this meetup and the next one we plan on making. I don't know, 6 months or a year from now. Let us know. Any contribution is helpful. This is God willing, for God's sake. We don't really pocket any of it for ourselves. So praise be to God. That is my announcement for now. Do you have more announcements?
Yeah. Anyone else want to make any announcements or questions for AAA?
I have a question. Can I take videos from this event, God willing, and make some, cool editings if everyone has permission? Can we discuss that maybe later? But I just wanted to ask that question, maybe because some people might not be comfortable to be in a video or picture sometimes. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I guess it depends on who all goes and what their comfort level is. I think that'd be cool. Some content out. I'll
Yeah,
share one. Oh, good.
maybe we can discuss that. Maybe, God willing.
Yeah. Looking for so did a new podcast this week. Get the link. Get in the chat. One sec. Yeah, it's basically the title is a Hadith and Sunnah House of Cards, and it's funny. It's when publish anything regarding themes of the Quran, you get like a fraction of the views. Anything against Hadith and Sunnah, people get a lot more excited about. But yeah. So it has to do with a number of clips, starting with the one from Yasser Ghazi, where he's saying that basically the Hadith sciences is completely discredited among academia, and going into some of the reasons behind it, because they have this kind of like A, blind trust into the chain of transmitters, and then B, even if you say that, look, let's concede with the chain of transmitters, you run into this problem where the Hadith, by their own admission, don't actually go to the prophet. They get attributed to typically about a handful of the different companions, and it's not even clear if those companions heard it directly from the prophet or they're narrating from someone else that they supposedly heard from. And there's no mechanism by which you can tell that, hey, the companions, were they trustworthy or not, that they're actually narrating from. So they have this blanket rule in among Sunnis that once you can trace it back to the companion, that you have to concede that they're trustworthy and honest, and they're not putting their personal opinion and nonsense in there. So it's just looking at different clips and points regarding why, again, people don't take the Hadith sciences as a valid. The triple put, it says, hey, can you mention that there will be a projector for whoever wants to give a presentation or sermon? Slots are 30 minutes long, but don't have to take the entire time. I have you, just Elham, and Evis marked as potentially giving presentations. Anyone interested in taking up a slot, get in touch with me ASAP. Also have you and me marked for Imam on Friday, depending on how strongly you feel you want to give it. I'll prepare something in case you don't feel good. I have to leave right now, God willing. Good. Anyone else? Comments? announcements? Anything they want to share? Anything else they want to discuss regarding just the Quran as a whole, beyond the verses? So we read from 24, 35 through 46. I did want to make a comment actually because we didn't talk about the last couple verses from that and this contrast regarding the different kinds of light. So if you saw, the first one was God's light, right? The second one was the mirage, and I attribute this to those who basically are chasing, the worldly desires as opposed to pleasing God. Then it talks about the exile from God as total darkness, where God can provide redemption. But then there's this last one in 43. It says, "Do you not realize that God drives the clouds and gathers them together and piles them on each other? Then you see the rain coming out of them. He sends down from the sky loads of snow to cover whomever he wills, while diverting it from whomever he wills. This is the brightness of the snow almost blinds the eyes." Um, my takeaway from this, and I could be wrong, this is the way I view it, this aspect of the blinding light. If you think about the contrast between, say, like a dark cloud and then one that's a white, is that the dark cloud is absorbing the light but not reflecting it, but the white cloud is actually reflecting the light. And same thing with the snow, right? The snow reflects the light and it becomes blinding. If you contemplate like a disbeliever, right? The term for disbeliever is someone who covers. Like it's like a tiller. You take the seed, you open the soil, and you cover it. That's where the word kufar comes from. And these are individuals who are receiving God's light, God's blessings, right? Left and right, they're getting provisions, but they're not just sharing it. They're not expressing appreciation towards it. But a believer, in contrast, there's so much, appreciation coming from them for all the things that God has given them, is that they're radiating God's light, through their acts of worship, through their appreciation, through the smiles on their faces. And this becomes blinding. It irritates the disbelievers. You hear this a lot from atheists and stuff, that they get upset. They see, people who believe in God being happy and joyful, because this is even scientifically proven. If you do studies, the people who have religion, have belief in God, typically trend to be much happier than those who don't. And this is I see this in an aspect of reflection of God's light. Anyone else want to bring up anything, either on the verses or just in general Quranic topics? If not, we can invite the Christians back in, and we can continue our debate with them.
Are they waiting for us?
No. They were on earlier, like before we studied, but we cut the conversation short.
Oh, nice.
Just
Throw
went
something
quiet here.
out. Oh, good.
No, I was just saying, it just went quiet here.
Give people a chance to chime in
Yeah.
if they want to be occupying. But if no one's speaking, I'll just keep going. There's this word in the Quran, hariyun, which is the word for disciples. It's a peculiar word to utilize towards the disciples. It literally means basically to whiten something. And the question is, okay, where did this connection come? If you look at it in Syriac, it's also used for the term of disciples. And I saw a possible connection. This is, we were talking, and then Jamil shared something interesting too. reading some of these Gnostic Gospels, and there's two parables in there regarding that God is the dyer, right? And I'm going to put the quotes in. So this is the first one. This is in the Gospel of Philip. It's like a Gnostic gospel. It says, God is a dyer. This is the good dyes said to be genuine dyes dissolve into what is dyed in them. So also those whom God dyes becomes immortal through his colors. For his dyes are immortal, and God baptizes those to be baptized in water. Right. So that's the first one, and then the second one is the same book as this parable. This is the master went into the dye works of Levi. Levi are the priest kind of lineage from the children of Israel. Took 72 colors of cloth, which represent the 72 tribes, and threw them into a vat. He drew them out, and they all were white. He said, "So the Son of Man has come as a dyer." It's just interesting that you have these two parables, because I don't recall seeing any of this in the New Testament, the canon that is kind of circulating, but in these Gnostics that it's making this connection with them, and this might be a possible connection between where this term came from. Once they became baptized, they became pure, and then they're spreading God's message, that they were known as quote unquote like the dyers, right? Which would be a accurate depiction of the word Hariyun. The other time you see this word used is for the mates in paradise, and keep in mind that it's always androgynous, is this male or female. Usually in a lot of translations they'll make them female, but in the Arabic it's actually kind of open-ended, and this has to do with the whiteness of the eyes, meaning that in essence that they're a pleasing to look at, but then b that someone who's showing whiteness in the eyes means that they also are pleased with what they see. So it has this aspect of kind of like mutual attraction. So I thought that that was kind of interesting, because yeah, I didn't know where this term came from, and that might be a connection there. I'll share the article for anyone who's interested. I'll add the other one. So it's funny, you go down some of these rabbit holes, and you discover new things, unknown. Like you start digging down one thing, and then you stumble on something else. And there's this verse in the Quran in Surah 53, verse 1, where it's a in the English it doesn't seem peculiar, but in the Arabic it's a little peculiar. So it says, "As the stars fell away." And this word that's used. Oh, I didn't put the Arabic. Yeah, so when it says that the stars fell away, the word that's used for fell away is hawa. And hawa, it has a couple different meanings, and it's not, you don't see it used anywhere else in the Quran for falling, except for this verse. And the first one is that it's of a like a bird of prey that dives, like nose dives, to basically whatchamacallit, for food. And the other one is to be beloved, right? Those are the two meanings when it says the stars fell away. And I'll put the verses 53 1 through 18. This has to do with the prophet's ascension to getting the Quran. It says, "Your friend Muhammad was not astray, nor was he deceived, nor was he speaking out of personal desire. It was divine inspiration, dictated by the most powerful, possessor of all authority. From its highest height at the highest horizon, he drew near by moving down until he became as close as possible. He then revealed to his servant what was to be revealed. The mind never made up what it saw. Are you doubting what he saw? He saw him in another descent at the ultimate point, where the eternal paradise is located. The whole place was overwhelmed. The eyes did not waver nor go blind. He saw great signs of his Lord." And the aspects, like, okay, so this is when the prophet received the Quran, and it's at this moment that he became a prophet. Okay, because what constitutes someone becoming a nabi, a prophet, is when they receive ata kitab wa hikmah. So when he's ascended, his soul's ascended. It says that the stars fell, and the word that's for falling is like a bird of prey, and also has this connotation of beloved. Now, there's this parallel in the Bible. It has to do with the baptism of Jesus, right? So Jesus is being baptized by John, and there's a passage there where it says that when he was baptized, okay, and for context, what's interesting is you don't hear this in any Christian writing. They have different theories to what it means for Jesus being baptized. My personal take is that when he's baptized, this is when he's being designated as the Messiah. Because we know, even as an infant, he says, God has given me the Injil, right, and has made me a prophet. So there's some other event that's taking place at this time when he's basically being baptized. And my understanding is that that's when he's being he's getting the title of Messiah. And Messiah means anointed. And what's interesting is the anointing is a form of baptism because anointing just means wiping oil, typically on a face, to basically um, uh, promote someone to a title. And that's kind of what it appears that's happening to Jesus at this time. Now, check out this passage when it uses this terminology. It says, "And when Jesus was baptized, right, so anointed, he went up immediately from the water, and behold, the heavens opened up, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove, and alighting on him. And lo, a voice from the heaven said, 'This is my beloved Son, in whom I'm well pleased.'" Now, when it uses this term "son" in the classic terminology, this just means someone that's basically becoming a Messiah, because they called the Son of God was a title that the Greeks used for anyone that they believed was a king. Right? Obviously, this does not mean that he's the begotten Son of God or any of that nonsense. That even in Jewish terminology, to be children of God just meant to be godly, right? But what's interesting is that it uses this term, like, so it's saying that, hey, when he's being commissioned as the Messiah, that the Spirit of God descended like a dove, right? And it uses the term beloved. And then if you go back to 53:1, what do we see? Right? That it says that the stars fell away, and the term that's used for falling is like a bird of prey, a hawk, right? That's going down, and it also has the secondary meaning of being beloved. So there's this like parallel between Jesus and Muhammad, when that they were commissioned, that they have these kind of like similar terminologies. I just thought that was interesting. Article on that one as well. Anyone else have anything else they want to share, discuss, talk about?
Peace. I'd like
Peace.
to make a comment, uh, Peter, in terms of what you were saying about the hawk, the bird of prey and the stars falling away. What comes to my mind is that an eagle or a bird of prey, once it targets it's the animal that it wants to attack, so to speak, it's very sharp trajectory, very sharp, very fast. And that's what I get that's what I get from that in terms of the stars falling away. That of course we know that Muhammad, escorted by angels, was traveling millions of times the speed of light. And that's as if he was traveling so fast, in other words, like a trajectory. He was moving an incomprehensible velocity, and the stars are falling away in the same way that a bird of prey moves at a tremendous velocity, speed with regard to attacking whatever the target is. There we go. There we go. The graphic that you put on the chat. That's how the stars fell away. Thank you. Peace.
I always envision it like a warp speed. It's like the soul is just going because
Yeah,
these
warp
objects that
speed.
are millions of light years away are just going to be flying past you in radiant lights. Because notice, in the biblical account too, it says like the spirit of God descended like a dove, right? That it wasn't actually a dove that's commonly depicted. And then, when it says the stars fell away, because it uses the term Hawa, you can't help yourself but realize, like, okay, well, this word also means this other thing. That it's kind of like bled into the word. And you see a lot of this in the Quran, where it has these kind of like play on words, where if you when you translate it, sometimes that doesn't necessarily carry over.
So basically, Muhammad's soul was kind of like a hawk and going to receive the Quran to the highest universe. Is that what we are kind of imagining here?
Yeah, I mean that's the imagination, but there's also this kind of parallel that I see with the commissioning of Jesus in the Bible, with how the history of the narrative towards Muhammad is when he received the divine revelation.
Oh yeah. In this one, he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove. In this one, the Spirit of God is descending instead of Jesus' soul going up, right? There's a little bit nuanced, but it's very interesting. These two animals, I mean, these two incidents.
The fact that they're both using bird, terminology, I find peculiar, right? That it says it descended like a dove, and then the stars, they descended like basically a hawk. Um, yeah, I think that there may be intentionality there in using those terminology, because there's like a multitude of words that could be used for descend, but it specifically used this one, and as far as I know, it's the only time in the Quran where the word Hawa is used in this way.
Interesting.
I wanted to share like this concept of some of the play on words, right? If you look like in the Arabic, the word for righteousness, there's a number of different words in the Quran that Rashad translates as righteous. Um, I got a table. I should make a table. But yeah, there's like a number of words that Rashad translates as righteousness, but each one has a different flavor. And when it's used, sometimes there's this uh, play on words, in the sense where it's like it's saying one thing, but it's kind of hinting at something else, right? Uh, and oftentimes, like, I mean, you can determine it in the English translation, but it's not as glaring, if that makes sense. And I'll give you an
Mhm.
example. So, like the word for righteousness, the one that's the most like definitive, you could say, okay, it's a one-to-one translation, is the word bira. Okay, and this is in 177, right, where it says righteousness defined.
Mhm.
It says, righteousness is not turning your faces towards the east or the west. Righteous are those who believe in God, the last day, the angels, the scripture, the prophets. They give the money cheerfully to the relatives, the orphans, the needy, the traveling alien, the beggars, and to free the slaves. And they observe the contact per Salat and give the obligatory charity Zakat. And they keep their word whenever they make a promise. They steadfastly persevere in the face of persecution, hardship, and war. These are the truthful. These are the righteous. Um, so these ones, in essence, it's like this word for righteousness here is bira, and you'll see in there's a verse where it talks about uh, being astray, and the word bira in the same root, it also means the shore, right? So those who are lost at sea, and then basically they implore God, and God saves them to the shore, right? And then they revert again. And it's like, if you see that when someone's astray, right, they're lost at sea, they're astray. It's the same word for straying. But then when they go to the shore, it's the same word for righteousness. So it's like if you look at that example, it goes to show that it's like, look, there's this kind of subtle in the allegory, in the play on words. I mean, obviously, if you tell someone that, like, they can understand it, but in the Arabic, it becomes more glaring.
Interesting. So it's kind of like a righteous person is he always tries to be the righteous, not when he's in a condition that he needs to be secured. So interesting.
But it's that aspect of, if you're astray, right? And that word, both in English and in Arabic, is the same, right? I could either be astray, like lost at sea, or I can be astray, spiritually. But the word for shore doesn't have that dual meaning, right? They're two different meanings. But in Arabic, it's the same root, right? The same root for shore is the same root for righteousness. Someone is astray, they implore God, God saves them to the shore, right? So basically brings them back to righteousness, and then they revert again. If you look, it says, if you're afflicted in the middle of the sea, you forget your idols and sincerely implore him alone. But as soon as he saves you to the shore, you revert. Indeed, the human being is unappreciative.
Wow, praise God. It's actually a very good point, because I have experienced this in my life with my friend. Um, it's very interesting. We accepted submission together with my roommate, and then he chose to disregard some of the message. And I told him, like, brother, you should not do that again. Intoxicant, okay? And we went to swimming at some point, and uh, the waves got him, and he couldn't back the shore. And he was like, we were having so much panic, and I was like, okay, let me run to the lifeguard and try to save him. And I was also thinking, well, he's under the age of 40. If he dies, he will go lower heaven, praise God. But at the same time, I was trying to help him, okay? And before lifeguard arrived to him, a jet ski picked him up, and he comes back to the shore, and he was so scared. We couldn't talk for a while, but God was warning all of us. I mean, this story is affecting me more than him at this point, because if I cannot make it after this point, receiving this message and seeing all the things, I would be very in danger. I cannot back to shore. It's very interesting. These two words are like in my life as a meaning. Thank you.
Yeah, isn't that interesting that they can interpret something in the fundamentally opposite way? So two people see it, one person sees it in one way and someone else sees it the complete opposite. I knew someone, funny enough, in college, same thing. They get the message and then they revert. And he was driving one night. So this is after he reverted. He was driving one night, and it's the highway. It's basically each side is two lanes, and it's separated by, there's like a not a partition, but a like a cliff in between. Okay. Um, and one car came on the exit ramp into the on ramp. So now the car is flying full speed in the wrong direction on a 2-lane highway. Okay. And this guy, he basically, it's late night. He's like, why the heck is there headlights coming towards me? Last second, he moves out of the way, and this car flies and crashes into the car behind him. Okay. And he's telling me this story. And I said, well, what do you think of that? Right? Because he went from submission outside of submission and this and that. And he says, oh, this is showing me that I'm on the right path because God didn't allow that car to hit me. I was like, oh, that's interesting, because I have the opposite. I think this is a wake up call that it's like, dude, you're going down the wrong way, right? It was just interesting that he interpreted it, the way he wanted to, and obviously I had my reasons for wanting to interpret it the way I wanted to. But we each felt justified in, what that lesson was supposed to be.
Yes, it's very interesting.
I share this one a lot, but I think it's another kind of one that kind of it might not hit as hard in the English as it does in the Arabic. And it has to do with Surah 2, verse 11. I'm going to put a screenshot so I can highlight the text. It's the hypocrites. It says, when they are told, do not commit evil, they say, but we are righteous. In the word here, salahun, this word is someone who's like fixing something, reforming something, right? It means that, hey, there's something broken and you're addressing it and fixing it. And I see this very telling in the aspect of it using it towards the hypocrites, is because one of the ways that the hypocrites self-justify themselves, they say, hey, I'm reforming, I'm purifying, I'm fixing. This thing was broken within, the religion, and I'm just here to correct it. And that's how they convince themselves that they're not committing evil. Um, and I just think that that's like, it's very telling in that word choice.
Right.
Because no one thinks that they're evil. No one thinks they're a hypocrite. Everyone has their justification, their belief to why they're on the right path. Because they might at moments realize their hypocrisy, but once they convince themselves that they're not, their moral compass is broken. But that aspect's like, okay, when they flip, what are they telling themselves to as an excuse to their hypocrisy? And you hear this a lot. I'm a reformer. I'm here to fix what's wrong.
This one is tricky, honestly. This one is very tricky because there's like there are verses um, forbid evil, advocate goodness, and I know the traditional understanding took these commandments into somewhere else, so extreme. I admit that, but at the same time, you want to reform what has been wrong, what has been done by the society. Hey, you guys doing this wrong. You guys are this. You guys are okay. You want to do that, but at the same time, you have this verse. no, no, you have to be careful. So the way looks like my understanding is that the way I forbid evil and advocate righteousness is very important. If this causes another evil, then this is the hypocrite way of doing it. But the way we are doing it is exactly how Quran explains. Then we are literally reforming, because when Rashad was saying this in the great debate, all the Muslims, their objective should be restore this religion back to the correct way of Islam. At this time he was saying that, but now we understand that this religion, the corrupted Islam, needs to be restored to the correct way. And the way to do this by not committing evil. It looks like. What do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up that point, right? My only reason of citing this verse is to show how each person is going to self-justify, right? Similar to the example you gave, your friend, he's about to drown, and then he comes out and he views this event as confirmation that he should continue to stray, right? Despite having that moment of clarity. And this is just the way that people they self-justify for themselves, that they know. And I agree with you. You can never commit sin in order for righteousness. It doesn't work that way, right? I'm just gonna go and rob some orphans, and then I'll be righteous. Like, this is the words that the people of Salat said when they slayed the camel. This is what the brothers of Joseph said when they threw him into the well. They said, "Look, we'll do this terrible thing, then we'll be righteous." When we do those terrible things, it shows that, okay, we don't really believe, you don't deserve the faith. But you brought up something else interesting, is this concept. So when it says they advocate righteousness and they forbid evil, what are the words that are used there? The word that's used there for righteousness is maruf. Maruf means something that's universal, it's recognized. Okay. And evil, in that expression that they advocate righteousness and forbid evil, is monker. Monker means it's unrecognizable. And the verse that shows like the clear meaning of this is in 12. Is it 58 or 53? Give me one sec. Let me see. 58. Right. This is Joseph's and his brothers came. When they entered, he recognized them. The term there is maruf, and they did not recognize him. He was unrecognizable. And the word there, that's munkarun, right? And so the question is, okay, why? What is the significance of recognized and unrecognized in the context of righteousness? There's actually an interesting take. This comes from Socrates, right? So it's the Socratic method. He'd go around and he'd ask people questions. He'd say, "Hey, Salami, what does courage mean?" Right? You give me a definition, and so you give me a definition, and then I will give you an example, that basically a counterexample to go against your definition. Okay. And then we go back and forth and we try to figure out, okay, what does courage mean through these examples? Now, the paradox of this is, okay, if you can't define me what courage is, how are we able to determine if some scenario is courageous or not? Does that make sense? Like, you're telling, me and you are saying, look, I don't have an exact definition of courage, but I can give you a scenario and you can be like, yeah, that's courageous, or no, that's not courageous. Somehow we know what courage is, right? We know what righteousness is. We know what, justice is. Even if we can't articulate it, we know it when we see it. It's the same thing. Righteousness, maruf, we all know it. When we see righteousness, we recognize it. When you see monker, when you see something that's like just abhorrent to you, you don't need to explain it. You just know that that's wrong. That's not just. You see someone being attacked unjustly. You see someone being victimized unjustly. I don't need to give you the exact definition. I know it when I see it. Right? And that's what it means when you advocate righteousness and forbid evil. We all inherently know what is good and what's wrong, right? This is actually specified in the Quran, that God gave us the knowledge of good and evil. Right? It's like I don't have to necessarily put the terminology there. I inherently know. Even when God talks about the Quran, one of the names of the Quran is the reminder. Right? How do you remind someone of something they already know? Right? If they didn't know it. And it shows that no, like the message in the Quran, the reason it resonates is because we all know that this is true. It's like it says that when they hear God's revelations, they recognize them like they recognize their own children.
I see. Recognize or not recognize. There's an interesting contrast there.
Yeah, like inherently, we know what's right and wrong. It's like even babies can recognize when there's an injustice. If you ever deal with kids, they're all constantly saying that's not fair. It's like they know they have this innate knowledge of what's fair and what's not fair, right? If I ask them, "Hey, define fairness for me," I think they'll really struggle. When they see something that they recognize as unfair, they have no problem calling it out.
Right. It gets a little bit complicated when you get older, though, isn't it?
Well, you realize that things are complicated right? In the sense where we want to do okay, there's this expression where God doesn't need statistics. The one science that human beings depend on, but it has no relevancy whatsoever to God, right? God is not comparing you against me. He's not saying, well, look, Peter did this and Salami did that, right? He's looking at you independently. He says, okay, I gave Salami X, Y, and Z. Salami, you're in this condition. What did you do with it, right? But from the human standpoint, we don't know all the variables. I don't know your upbringing. I don't know what your state of mind was. I don't know what your, thought process was, what you viewed, what you thought. So at best, I can make a rough, assessment. Say, okay, look, from what I can tell, Salami was right in this regard or was wrong in that regard. But we're not the ones who encompass all visions, right? God does. God encompasses all visions. He knows everything that is transpired in your life, and he judges you according to that paradigm. Right? He doesn't judge you against me. He judges you against yourself.
Yes. Yes, definitely.
God's the only entity in the entire world who can actually judge on equity. you know, the rest of us
Right.
we can't. I can just judge by what I see, what I know. Against each other's, because I can't make a perfect simulation of everything that goes into any individual.
Yeah, most of the time, if you are lucky, like I mean, when I say lucky, like if God helps you, your judgment might coincide with the truth. This is kind of the result.
I mean, for us, it's the thing is you have to follow the process. You trust that God has the outcome. So I say, look, I'm going to assess, the like. Let's say you turn in a test, okay, and I grade it, and I give you, okay, hey, you got a B plus, right? I can't take in consideration how much effort, time you put into it. Oh, I didn't get good sleep. Oh, I was my brother had to go to the hospital, and it didn't allow me to give that extra time to study. I just can't make that assessment, right? All I can do is I say, look, you gave me this test. I'm grading this test. And that's as much as we're responsible for. But the ultimate one who's going to judge everything is God, because God can take all those variables in consideration.
Right. Great job.